Hello everyone, it's Brian here in Toronto. Yesterday, after I got out of bed, I checked YouTube. Well, I didn't check YouTube immediately. I had other things to do, but when I checked YouTube, I realized that the so-called 2025 vinyl tag is out. And I had two thoughts immediately. First is this not the 2024 vinyl tag? Don't we take the opportunity to look back on the previous year and call it the 2024 vinyl tag? Secondly, I wondered if it was January already, because it seems to me, well, I know it's true. In the past, I did these responses in January. Pretty sure about that, but I guess I could check that. Anyway, so it's called the 2025 vinyl tag. Now, for the amount of time that I've been in the vinyl community, which is almost 3 years, it's been handled by Rob Walker, but this year he opted out. And so this year's questions were designed by Edwin, the pretty green vinyl guy. I'll leave a link below. I've watched his video and only one other one because I wanted to get this done before I had seen anyone else's responses. Now, as others have undoubtedly said or will say, if you are thinking about starting a VC channel, this is probably the best time to do it because you have given to you here 20 questions that you only have to answer. You don't have to think of any topics or do anything like that. You just answer the questions. And in fact, the first vinyl tag I did was the second video I ever made after a brief introductory video. The rest, as they say, is history. So if you're interested in it, now is the best time to start. After all, we're coming to a new year. Maybe it could be your New Year's resolution. So we have 20 questions. I have my choices. I have the questions in front of me so I don't get lost. Number one, best purchase of 2024, new or old? And that took me all of 2 seconds to decide. I've chosen this box set from the Velvet Underground called The Complete Matrix Tapes, recorded live on November 26th and 27th, 1969. And not only recorded live, it was professionally recorded, but the tapes were thought to have been lost. Parts of this were released on other collections, but this is the first time the entire 2 nights have been released. This came out in 2015 on compact disc, and this is the 2019 8LP box set, which I got for a good price. And I will tell you about that. Now, this came up in a different video, so I had more detail about that. If you go back, you might find it. But I'd been looking for this for a while, and the price on Amazon was insane. I think it must have been a third-party seller because it was like $1,000. And then even on Discogs, the price was really high. And when you factor in shipping to a remote country like Canada, it just makes it untenable. So I did not buy it. But I walked into a record store in Toronto, and I noticed that behind the cash register, he had a bunch of box sets, and this one was sitting there, which I was stunned to see. And it had no price on it. The others had really large price tags that you could read. And I asked him what it was, and he thought about it for a minute, and he said, well, I could look up the invoice, or I could sell it to you for X amount of dollars. And I thought, that's an incredible price. And I was really surprised. But he said, I'm having a sale right now, 20% off. So I'll give you 20% off the price I just quoted you. And at that point, I had to buy it. No question, I had to buy it. Now, because there are 2 nights and different sets here, there are songs that repeat themselves, but it's actually really interesting to hear. First of all, the quality on the recording is excellent. The pressing is really, really good. But you do get, I can't imagine listening to all 8 records at one time, but if you go through it, you will get different versions of the same song. But it's really an excellent set. I'd have loved to have, a recording of, more recordings of John Cale with the Velvet Underground, but this is great. And I really love it. Now, question number 2 is 50 years later, the best album from 1974. Here's a little tidbit. Before I ever had a VC channel, I wasn't even sure I would start one. I started making lists of videos I thought I would make if that ever happened. And to be honest, most of those I never did. But I did go through and write down what I thought were my favorite records for each year starting in 1963. The 1963 list is kind of hilarious because I think there's only 2 or possibly 3 things on it. I just don't have a strong collection from that year. But I went through and I recorded 4 of those videos. I've never recorded 1974, and I looked at the list, and I think this is pretty accurate. And I chose, and this is no surprise, John Cale's Fear from 1974. If it comes to making the video for the best or favorite records from 1974, I will listen to the top 10 in my list to make sure I've got them in the right order, but I think I do. This has Phil Manzanera and Brian Eno on it, and it's, John Cale, it's the first Island Years trilogy album. It's his entry into more of a rock sound compared to his earlier records. It's got that, some more energetic songs, but some really peaceful tracks like Emily and Ship of Fools and Buffalo Ballet, and some confounding ones like The Man Who Couldn't Afford to Orgy, things like that. Really excellent record. And again, no surprise, I did a whole video on this particular record if you want to check it out. But for me, at this moment, this is my favorite record from 1974. An album that defines a genre. And I guess here we're thinking of records that when you think of a particular genre, you think of only that record, or you think of that record first, or perhaps a record that initiated a genre. And for me, I have to cover part of this up, I think. This is Bauhaus in the Flat Fields, their first record from 1979. Of course, they had released, I said Fields, in the Flat Field. They had released Bela Lugosi is Dead before this, but this is the first full length from them. And I think if you were to do research on this, you would probably find that this is considered to be the first goth or goth rock album. Now, of course, lots of music before this would have hinted at it or suggested it or been a precursor to it, but I think this is probably the first one. This is a West German pressing, by the way. This is the band led by Peter Murphy. Includes, you'll know some of these names from bands like Love and Rockets and Tones on Tail, but really excellent record. Possibly not the best Bauhaus record, but still really good. Number 4, best band from your home country. And I've interpreted that as being favorite band from my home country. And I don't think I can be a Canadian and not mention Rush. So I've chosen them as my favorite band. When I was a younger person, I don't think I was a huge fan of Rush. The song I remember most was Closer to the Heart, which would be on the radio right when I was like a very young person. But I don't know if I ever loved it or not, but I grew to love them. I think the first thing I heard from them was Hemispheres. Like the first album I heard entirely was Hemispheres, but I don't know. Again, I don't know when that was. And I thought they're really great. This, by the way, is Vapor Trails remixed. So if you have the CD for Vapor Trails, you may know that it is terrible. I bought it, listened to it twice, and put it on the shelf and never listened to it again because it is a victim of the so-called loudness wars. So there's heavy distortion in it. They fixed it for this record. The vinyl, or the hype sticker, says 2013 remix version. And there's a quote from Geddy Lee saying, "Every song has been given a new life." Yes, every song has been resurrected, salvaged, saved, fixed. This is much, much better. It's double vinyl version. I don't know if I guess they re-released a CD too. I'm not sure if they did or not. But Rush, I mean, there's so many bands from Canada to choose from, even in our small nation here. But that would be tops for me. An artist you miss dearly. No surprise here again. I've chosen Leonard Cohen. I mean, he died in his 80s, so he wasn't a young man when he died, but I was hoping we'd have more time with him. I was lucky enough to see him in concert. This is a weird German compilation from 1982 with an interesting track selection, but I think possibly my favorite artist of all time, and I think the best songwriter to come out of at least Canada. I'll talk about him later. That's a little spoiler there. But Leonard Cohen, definitely someone I miss. All right. Best live album in your collection. I've interpreted this as being favorite. Not favorite. I couldn't choose best or favorite, so what I decided to do is just a live album that I like. So I chose Bob Mould, Circle of Friends. This was originally released as a video in 2007, but this is the 2020 Record Store Day release on double clear vinyl. It's recorded at the 930 Club, and I don't know if you need to see that, but there are double vinyl here on clear vinyl. It's a really good collection of live stuff. I mean, he starts with some tracks from Sugar, his band Sugar. There are solo Bob Mould tracks here. And then for the first time in I think about 20 years by this time, he performed some Husker Du tracks with a full band. So that's interesting to hear. But this is a really strong collection of Mould songs, Sugar songs, and Husker Du songs, which I think is really great from Record Store Day. Your partner just dumped you. What album are you putting on? Yeah, that one, something I'd never thought of before, and weirdly, One of the first things that occurred to me is what I'm going to show you. I don't know if this is actually what I do, but I read that question and thought, yeah, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Murder Ballads. Good record. One of my favorites from him that I've heard, I should say. This is what I'm choosing. Make of that what you will. Best sounding drums on an album. This is a difficult question for a non-audiophile, non-musician to answer. I mean, I would like a better system. I guess the first things that occurred to me were people like recordings featuring John Bonham or Neil Peart or Bill Bruford. Those are pretty obvious. But I thought I would choose a band that you might not, when you hear the band, you might not think of drums at all. And that is The National. This is their record Boxer. But I think Brian Devendorf is a really good drummer. And I think the sound of the drums on here is really good. If you think of The National, you're going to think of Matt Berninger's baritone, these introspective lyrics, that kind of thing. You might even think of the guitar work. But I think that the drumming here, it sounds pretty good to me. I mean, the obvious one is Squalor Victoria, but equally Apartment Story, Slow Show, even Guest Room. I mean, those have really great sounding drums to my ear, if you ask me. So maybe not the first band you would think of for good sounding drums, but I think it's worth listening to. So The National. Favorite artist who is a member of two or more bands. I reinterpreted that as favorite artist who is or has been a member of two or more bands, and I chose none other than Johnny Marr, of course, of the Smiths, but also had spent time with the Electronic, Modest Mouse, Pretenders. So he had this period of time where he was maybe like a journeyman guitarist, and then he entered his solo career full time, it seems, and that's his path now. But one of my favorite guitarists from one of my favorite bands, and he's contributed a lot. Like the recordings he did with the I think are much better because he's there. I saw the tour with him in the really great. So that's my choice for a member of more than two or more bands. Now, number 10. Beatles or Stones? And honestly, I've had this question given to me many times over the years. I don't know why. I guess when people ask that question to you and they know you, I guess they're trying to find out. I don't know what they're trying to find out. But when someone doesn't know you, it's another question entirely. So I've always struggled. Well, I shouldn't say that. I've never struggled with this answer because I think I like them equally. But other times when I've been asked this question, my answer has been Led Zeppelin. It's just... Why does it have to be the Beatles or the Stones? If you're thinking of classic rock, you throw in The Who, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, you throw in even Cream and things like that. For me, Led Zeppelin is the best of all those bands. I always loved them. Interesting music. And so I'm not that I dislike the Stones or the Beatles. I do like them. I couldn't honestly choose, but I think the Led Zeppelin is better. Of course, this is Physical Graffiti in the nice die-cut sleeve. I bought this copy in Canada in 1985 or 86, and I can tell you that because I know where I was living at the time and I remember buying it. So, good album. Good band. Number 11. You found a bag of weed. What are you going to listen to? Now, I'm assuming that should read, you found a bag of weed, you smoked some. What are you going to listen to? And I guess I was thinking of something that you could just sort of relax to, trip out to, enjoy the experience. And the band that occurred to me first was Fly Pan Am. This is a post-rock band, a Canadian post-rock band, adjacent to Godspeed You, Black Emperor on the Constellation record label. I like this band a little bit more than Godspeed You because it seems to be a little more experimental, a little more electronic. The songs tend to be a little more repetitive, which I really like. I'm a big fan of endlessly repetitive music. Let me just tell you a bit about this. There's the title here, which means Sedatives and Frequencies and Lines, came out in 2000. Not everyone is going to like this band. I remember encouraging a friend of mine to listen to a different recording from this band, and he couldn't even finish it. So, meanwhile, I thought it was the most transformative thing I'd ever heard, or that's not the right word, but I just found it really intriguing. So I love that band from Canada. So let's see, an album from the 1980s you still listen to. Well, honestly, if you ask certain people, even some members of the vinyl community, they will think all I listen to is music from the 1980s. So literally, without any exaggeration, I could have chosen hundreds of records from the 1980s that I still listen to. But I just chose one, possibly the best record from the 80s. That is the Pixies' Doolittle. Now, I realize this is towards the end of the 80s. This is 1989, and it's not that classic 80s new wave synth sound. This is obviously a guitar record, but maybe the best record from that decade. Plays like a greatest hits record to me because the songs are so familiar. Love this album, and equally I could have chosen any number of records from Echo and the Bunnymen, The Cure, The Smiths, just a huge number of records because it was an important decade for me. An artist whose political stance has soured you. This is a question that I don't think I can answer. I like to think that I'm someone who can appreciate music for music and not get into the politics. Someone mentioned a while ago in a comment that something about John Lydon's politics that the person didn't like. And honestly, I didn't know what that was. I didn't bother to check it out. I have read lots of headlines about people's complaints about Morrissey, but I've never read the articles themselves. So let's take a different tack on this and say something that soured me musically in the last year. And that is, I've been watching a YouTube channel called Wings of Pegasus. The guy, his name is Phil. He's an English guitarist. And what he's done over the years is talked about various performances, analyzed various live performances, but more recently, he's used pitch monitoring software to analyze in more detail certain performances. So for an example, the Celine Dion performance at the Paris Olympics, drum roll, was not a live performance. She recorded something in the studio before then, had it pitch corrected, and sang over the track at the actual event. So she was lip syncing, or miming as it is called in certain places. She wasn't actually singing. He's come to the same conclusion about Taylor Swift, in that many of her shows and many of the songs aren't actually sung live. So what they will do is record a track in a studio. They leave some imperfections in it, like plosives and the P's and the S's, and then she sings over it at the concert. Other bands that have been guilty of this, he talks about certain videos that have been posted. So a Bryan Adams video that was pitch corrected after the performance, an Eric Clapton video that was pitch corrected after the performance to put on YouTube. He talks about the Eagles. So it's kind of disappointing to me that people would pay, especially now with the price of concert tickets, all that money to see something that may not actually be live. They may have backing tracks, and I think there should be better disclosure of that. So that's something that, interesting guy, interesting channel, and I would think that this would disturb many people. Show a favorite record label. That's question number 14. I've already mentioned this record label, and that is the Constellation record label out of Montreal. And here's an example of a record from them. This is the Silver Mount Zion Memorial Orchestra, and they've changed their name a few times. Tra-La-La Band or Choir. I'm not sure which one this is. This is Horses in the Sky. Constellation Records is, in my opinion, the best record label in Canada. Their marquee act is Godspeed You, Black Emperor, but there's a lot of bands that are related to that band because of offshoots of that band, a huge stable of recording artists, and pretty much, with some minor exceptions, I could go with any record from Constellation and like what I'm hearing. We've got Godspeed You, Silver Mount Zion, Fly Pan Am, Sofa. There's a huge list. I can't even go through them all. By the way, if you go to their website right now, they're having a sale. I've not been paid to say this. They're having a half-price sale on some of their records right now. So here we go. This is Silver Mount Zion. Really good packaging always. And the good news is that their prices aren't that high compared to other labels. So really excellent record label, which I really recommend. So I lost my pace. Okay, a run of 3 great singles. I don't really think in terms of singles. It might seem weird. I've always bought albums. I never really was a singles buyer. I don't think in terms of singles. Often I don't even know what the single was. But I chose a record that had a number of singles on it that I think are really great. And that is XTC's The Black Sea. There were 5 singles from this record. The first was Generals and Majors, which I thought was, when I heard that, an excellent song. Towers of London, Sergeant Rock Is Going to Help Me. 3 excellent singles in a row. And then they released Respectable Street, and I think Love at First Sight was the 5th single. Fantastic album. And the weird thing is, with having 5 singles. My favorite XTC song is on this record, and it wasn't even a single. Isn't that weird? Love the album design. Great band. I think this is one of their best. Really great album. All right. An RSD purchase that you actually consistently listen to. I think the feeling here is that maybe people buy things just to have them and for price increases or whatnot. But apart from the Bob Mould one and others, here's something I've listened to quite frequently. This is the Ramones box set, the Sire years 1981 to 1989. I bought this because the price was really good, and because I only had the first 2 or maybe 3 on original Canadian pressings. The other ones I didn't have, and then there's this rarities disc in here. And I bought it because I got it on sale. And, is the Ramones from the 80s as good as the 70s? Well, no. But, even though I had some of these on earlier Canadian pressings, I didn't listen to them a lot, but this has kind of compelled me to investigate the Ramones more fully, and I do like it. So I'm happy to have bought that. So, and there are other RSD albums that I do continue to listen to. All right. You can be reincarnated as any artist, dead or alive. Who's it going to be? Again, there was absolutely no question about this. I chose Leonard Cohen, and I'm just showing you another German compilation from 1980. So, really interesting collection here. I don't think that's Leonard Cohen on the cover. It doesn't look like him. So why Leonard Cohen? Well, as I said earlier, I think he was Canada's best singer-songwriter. I think he was the best songwriter of the 20th century. Now, some people, Bob Dylan fans, might object to that, but I think he was so talented. And he's had a very interesting career, if you ask me. I mean, writing his first book of poetry in 1956, later writing 2 novels, the second of which, called Beautiful Losers, was banned in many countries for obscenity. So you couldn't even buy a copy here for years. Trust me, I searched in vain for it. So he had this idyllic experience of living in Greece, writing, so a mixture of poetry and novels. Then he came to New York City came back to North America, first to New York, then I think to Nashville, because he wanted to record music. Interesting decision at that point in his life. He was best known, perhaps, well, not best known, but well known to be a ladies' man, so womanizer, which I find. Now, I'm assuming you'd be reincarnated at infancy, wouldn't be, and I don't know if it means at the same time, but I'm assuming you would get all the talent this person had. But again, at some points he was more well known outside of Canada than inside of Canada. Even in the United States, his album Various Positions wasn't even released in the United States when he sent it to the record label. They didn't like it, which has Hallelujah on it, believe it or not. But then he had these other weird things. So the one thing I wouldn't want is he said he experienced depression. That wouldn't be great. He did spend time in a Buddhist monastery, so he disappeared for years. That's kind of strange. And then his business manager embezzled money. Those things are not really great to me. But on the other hand, the financial situation forced him to record new music and go out on the road when I think he was interested in retiring. So his music was exposed to a whole new generation. I think he's endlessly fascinating. I think one thing that some people miss is the humor in his... some of his music and the humor, if you read interviews with him or watch interviews, they're fascinating because he's very well spoken and he's very funny. So no question there. I would choose Leonard Cohen. All right. Best 3 lines in a song. So not to go to Leonard Cohen again because that's the obvious choice. I've chosen a different Canadian singer-songwriter called Bruce Cockburn. This is his record Charity of Night from 1997. So he's started out as a classic old folky in the late 60s, although he did bring in some electric guitar in his music and still does. He's gone through an interesting progression, probably better known at certain parts of his career as a political songwriter. So there's lots of examples of, biting political commentary. But he also had that element of writing love songs. And on this particular record, it says 3 lines. I'm going to read 4, and it's from a song called The Coming Rains. So it says, "In the town, neon flickers in the ruins. 7 crows swoop past the luscious moon. If I had wings like those, there'd be no waiting. I'd come panting to your door and slide like smoke into your room." Pretty good, I think. Anyway, one of my favorite singer-songwriters, really excellent guitarist. I think he's known as being an exceptional guitarist, but he also wrote some really interesting kind of love songs, I guess. All right, an album you never tire of. This, I could have just almost picked blindly. records I never tire of, but I chose something that would ties in with the second item, and that's Peter Murphy, who was in Bauhaus. And this is his record Deep from it says 1990, but it may have come out in late 89. This is a masterpiece, if you ask me. Favorite Peter Murphy record. If I ever made a list of top 10 records of all time, this would be in the top 5 without question. I think it's really brilliant. It has the hit that was big in some markets, Cuts You Up. That may not have been top 40 for sure, but we have really nice aggressive track, The Line Between the Devil's Teeth, and That Which Cannot Be Repeat. But he has these more softer poetic songs like A Strange Kind of Love, Marlene Dietrich's favorite poem. Really excellent record. And if you get the CD, it ends with a bonus track, which is a reprise of Roll Call, which is good to hear, because that song you don't want to end, and then it does, and you get this reprise, which is fantastic. Fabulous record. I really recommend that one. Last question. Share your favorite VC channel. I can't. I like them all. Well, I should say I like everyone I've ever seen. It's endlessly fascinating to me that just when you think you got a handle on who's in the VC, you find a channel you've never heard of before. They've got 4,000 subscribers, hundreds of videos, and how is it that I've never seen this channel before? I think we all sometimes get caught in little, I'm not sure they're cliques, but you end up having a group of people that you're more familiar with. But there's a whole world out there. So I don't really have a favorite one. When I started watching videos, I watched one guy in particular for forever, and then I ran out of videos. He stopped making new ones, and I went on to someone else, and then sort of expanded. By the time I was making videos, I wanted to see other content, and of course you want to have the conversation with comments back and forth. So it's very difficult for me to choose a favorite VC channel. I do watch channels that I will say I don't like any of the music on, which might seem strange to you, but if I watch a channel that's talking about like death metal, I don't really have any. I don't have any at all. And yet sometimes the host is so interesting that you just want to watch. So you become familiar with them as almost friends. And then the people I've met in person, you have a different relationship with. And of course, being in Canada, there's a number of Canadian VC channels, and we share a similar reference point, I suppose. So I don't think I can pick a favorite VC channel. It just seems impossible to me, because there are also so many that I would have on an equal footing. So I don't know. I can't really answer that question. So that was the 2024 or 2025 Vinyl Tag. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.